Most people look at someone who is completely alone and immediately feel sorry for them. Society has conditioned us to assume that this person must be antisocial, sad, broken, or just struggling to find friends. We live in a world that praises the loudest voice in the room and treats extroversion as the gold standard of human happiness. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if some of the most mentally sharp, emotionally grounded, and cognitively sophisticated people you will ever meet are the ones who deliberately choose their own company? Not because they are broken and not because they are lonely, but because their internal processor operates at a completely different, higher frequency. If you do the 5 things I am about to describe alone, purely because you want to, without being prompted, your brain is functioning in a zone that most humans never reach. Here is what nobody tells you about the rare, invisible psychology of true solitude. Picture a typical Saturday afternoon. Everyone you know is out somewhere loud. They are crowded into a noisy rooftop bar, packed into a mall, or trapped in a group hangout, where 90% of the conversation is just empty white noise, gossip, and performance. And you are sitting somewhere quiet. Maybe a corner of your apartment, a bench in a quiet park, or just inside your parked car. And you're just thinking. No urgent tasks to finish, no emails to answer. You are simply letting your mind drift and move through ideas at its own natural pace. And right at that exact moment, a tiny, intrusive voice whispers in the back of your head, "Should I feel guilty about this? Is something wrong with me?" Let me tell you something crucial. That voice is not yours. It was planted there by years of social engineering and cultural narratives that insist social equals happy and solitude equals failure. But here is what is actually happening inside your brain during that quiet moment, and why your ability to sit still matters more than you think. 1. You think through problems completely alone before asking for help. What is most people's first, primal instinct when they hit a difficult life problem or a complex dilemma? They immediately reach for their phone. They text a friend, ask for opinions in a group chat, or vent to a family member. They instantly outsource their cognitive discomfort because holding uncertainty feels too heavy. Your instinct is fundamentally different. You sit with the problem first. You roll it around in your head, looking at it from 5 different angles like a Rubik's Cube. You let yourself get frustrated, you let the frustration settle into calm, and then you analyze it again. In clinical psychology, this is called autonomous thinking, and it is becoming dangerously rare in the modern digital age. Most humans are wired to avoid mental friction at all costs. But when you face that friction alone, you build what psychologists call a strong internal locus of control, the deep-rooted belief that your own reasoning structure is capable and worth trusting. You don't make decisions based on external validation. You make them because you have practiced thinking without a safety net. 2. You process intense emotions quietly by yourself. Let's make an important distinction here. This is completely different from being emotionally unavailable or detached. There are people who go silent when they are hurt because they are emotionally freezing, shutting down, and suppressing their pain. But then there are people who go silent because there is a massive, deliberate internal restoration project happening inside their consciousness. When a heavy wave of sadness, anger, or confusion hits you, you don't go to social media to post a cryptic message, and you don't look for immediate distraction. You go to a quiet room. You ask yourself honest, sometimes brutal questions. You feel the emotion fully instead of performing it for an audience. People who do this possess an incredibly high degree of emotional granularity. You don't just feel bad or upset. You can pinpoint the exact texture, origin, and name of your internal state. This psychological precision is directly linked to superior emotional regulation, better long-term relationships, and a bulletproof mental structure. Most people live too fast to ever sit still enough to discover what they are actually feeling. 3. You make massive life decisions without seeking a consensus. You're not naive. You gather data, you listen to expert perspectives, and you observe how the world moves. But when it comes to pulling the trigger on a choice that genuinely shapes your destiny, a major career shift, ending a long-term relationship, or moving to a completely new city, you ultimately retreat into total quiet and make the final call by yourself. You do not need a committee of 5 friends to validate your choice before you feel okay with it. Social psychology has documented for decades how desperately the human animal is pulled toward conformity, especially under conditions of uncertainty. When people don't know what to do, their ancient evolutionary survival instinct kicks in, forcing them to look at the crowd and mirror the majority. But you have mastered the crucial evolutionary leap between input and instruction. To you, other people's opinions are just raw data points. They are not your final answer. Developing that kind of intellectual independence requires immense psychological courage, and it is a trait found only in the rarest minds. 4. You genuinely enjoy your own company without needing to justify it. There are 2 entirely distinct versions of solitude in psychology. The first version feels like exile. It is lonely, painful, and you spend your time wishing someone else was there to fill the void. The second version, however, feels like a luxury. It is the state where you are alone, and you finally feel like your truest, unmasked self. The quiet in the room isn't empty to you. It is full of your own presence. People who reach this specific stage have done the heavy internal lifting that 90% of the population skips entirely. They have actively made peace with their mistakes, gotten comfortable with their own thoughts, and embraced their own eccentricities and weird sense of humor that only they find funny. Psychologists call this rare state self-companionship, and data shows it is one of the single strongest predictors of long-term psychological well-being. It is not wealth, it is not superficial achievements, and it isn't even the number of your social connections. It is your fundamental ability to be alone and feel completely whole. 5. You reflect on your own behavior without being asked. This final sign is perhaps the most telling indicator of a highly evolved intellect. Late at night, or hours after a social interaction that felt slightly off, you find your mind naturally drifting backward. You ask yourself, why did I react so defensively to that comment? What was I actually feeling underneath? What would I do differently next time if given the chance? Nobody assigned you this homework. There is zero external pressure on you to change. You are entirely a volunteer in your own self-analysis. In developmental psychology, this unprompted self-reflection is the hallmark of what is known as a post-conventional mind. It means your moral, ethical, and cognitive compass operates entirely from an internal system of values, rather than just reacting to external social expectations or fear of punishment. Most people only reflect when they are forced to. When they crash into a wall, ruin a relationship, or get publicly called out. You do it preemptively, quietly, on your own time, simply because you desire to grow. As you can see, none of the 5 things I just described are loud. None of them are flashy. Nobody is ever going to hand you a trophy for sitting alone in a quiet room and thinking deeply. Nobody is going to throw a party or congratulate you for processing your heaviest emotions in silence, or for making critical life decisions without a crowd's approval. But these invisible internal habits shape a human being in ways that cannot be faked. They build an architecture of the mind that trusts itself completely, a self that doesn't shatter when life applies pressure, a unique, profound kind of intelligence that isn't measured by standardized tests, university degrees, or social status. It is measured entirely by the quality of your inner life and the depth of your self-knowledge. The truth is, most people genuinely never get there, not because they lack the capacity, but because they never slow down long enough to find out who they actually are when nobody is watching. But you already know exactly how to do that. And that isn't nothing. That is actually everything.